that matter.
Africa Link, every weekday here on DW.
When Nigerian President Bola Tinubu took office in May 2023, he removed a fuel subsidy as part of his economic reforms. But the measures sent fuel prices sky high, and the prices of food and transport almost tripled. Despite being Africa's biggest crude oil producer, Nigeria has faced significant setbacks due to large-scale oil theft and pipeline sabotage. These issues have slashed output, reduced exports, crippled government finances, and posed a serious challenge for President Bola Tinubu. And it's not just economic hardships. Security challenges remain in various parts of the country. For more on this, let me bring in Kabiru Adamu, a political and security analyst. He's Managing Director, Beacon Security and Intelligence Limited. That's a private company that operates in Nigeria and the Sahel region. Also with me is Ben Shemang, DW's correspondent in Nigeria. Welcome to the Africa Link podcast. Kabiru, 2024 has been quite a year for Nigeria. How would you describe it?
Yes, quite an interesting year. It is the first year that the new government, administration of President Bola Tinubu, introduced a budget and, of course, attempted to implement the budget. Now, in the area of security, using metrics, we saw, unfortunately, an escalation of the security situation in the country. As at the end of December, almost about 13,000 Nigerians had been killed in different security occurrences across the country, and about 5,000 plus Nigerians have been abducted. This is a deterioration compared to what happened in 2023, when we saw about 10,000 Nigerians killed and less than 4,000 Nigerians abducted in 2023. Unfortunately, this does not reflect in the narrative being given by the government. Government officials seem to suggest that there is an improvement in the security situation, and they cite instances of the killing of several bandits, terrorists, and other criminals as reasons for citing those successes. They also point a finger to the purchase of increased equipment and other warfare repository for both the military and the other security agencies as a pointer to this success. But in terms of the reality on ground for the livelihood and activities of the average Nigerian, unfortunately, he or she hasn't seen much improvement in terms of security. There are indicators over the year that have pointed to the security circumstances in the country. I think the most important one, or that is very obvious, was the death of the Chief of Army Staff, General Lagbaja. He died for medical reasons, and for about 2 months he was out of circulation and obviously, receiving medical attention. And then he died, and then a new general has been appointed. Others are the attempt to create state police. It's part of the agenda of the Bola Tinubu administration, and it received a lot of attention in 2024. Unfortunately, up to the end of the year, there is no clear direction in terms of where or how the government intends to achieve this desire to create state police. The third one, which is, I'll stop there, is the attempt to grant autonomy to the local governments. This is something that would be significant in achieving the security imperatives of the government, for the simple reason that a lot of the triggers and actions that lead to insecurity are rooted in lack of governance at the local government level. So this desire to grant autonomy to local government, if it's achieved, it would allow the local government take up certain responsibilities, especially the socio-economic circumstances that lead to insecurity.
Break it down for us. Why, in your opinion, and based on your analysis, do you think the security situation in Nigeria has worsened in 2024?
For two simple reasons. The inability to have a harmonized approach to the security strategy being implemented by the government. As you are aware, Nigeria is a federal system. It has the federal government and then it has the state governments. Unfortunately, the inability of the federal government that has responsibility for security under the constitution is the federal government that has overall responsibility for security. That responsibility has not been escalated down to the state government. So a lot of what is being done by the federal government. And because the average Nigerian lives in the state, and that is where the security occurrences occur, you now have a situation where the 36 states of Nigeria are implementing, in some instances, divergent security strategies. In the Northwest, which is the hotbed or hotspot for security occurrences in Nigeria, you have governors that believe in different strategies. If we use banditry as an example, of course, banditry is probably the greatest contributor to fatalities in Nigeria in 2024. But you now have governors who believe in different strategies. On the one hand, you have governors who believe in negotiation. And then on the other hand, you have governors who would say they would never negotiate with bandits. An example is Kaduna State. The governor did implement a negotiation strategy and was able to achieve some peace settlement with some bandits that led to the release of a significant number of their captives. But then you have Katsina and Zamfara State that would tell you they would never negotiate with bandits. The only circumstance that will allow them to negotiate with them is if the bandits, come to them and then they now lay down terms that the bandits will accept. But overall, they will tell you they would never negotiate. So this is one. The second element is the absence of accountability. And accountability can be broken down into two. Number one is the operational accountability. And the second one is the financial accountability. Now, if you break down Nigeria's budget for the last 10 years, security as the single sector has received the highest budgetary allocation. Last year, 2020, this year actually, 2024, the budgetary provision for security is around 3.5 trillion naira. The 2025 budgetary proposition is for about 4.9 trillion naira, which is the single highest, more than education, more than health, more than infrastructure. There is no other sector that comes near to that 4.9 trillion naira. But unfortunately, security is probably the only sector that does not receive the type of auditing and monitoring and evaluation mechanism other sectors enjoy. So there is no way of knowing that this money is actually being spent for what it is meant for. Then when it comes to operational accountability, you have military operations that don't have an end date, that don't have any system of measuring their performances. There are several of them at the moment. A new one was introduced in 2024 called Operation Fansanyama to address the banditry challenge in the northwest of the country. There is no mention of what it's meant to achieve. There is no mention of the mechanism for measuring how that achievement would be. So a lot of observers, especially civil society organizations, continue to see security as a conduit for siphoning public funds because of this absence. And this is even more worrisome when you consider the fact that the parliamentary arm of government, the legislative arm of government that should have responsibility for oversight, which also has responsibility for approving the budget, should have questioned all of this, but then unfortunately they are not. So these are the two simple reasons why we're not seeing an improvement in the security situation in the country.
Right. Security clearly was a major issue in 2024. So thanks a lot for that deep breakdown of everything. Coming to you, Ben Shemang, you are our correspondent. You've been covering on a lot of issues when it comes to Nigeria. The economy, it goes without saying, has been also quite challenging for many. Nigeria is dealing with one of the highest inflation it's had in a while, high cost of living. So when it comes to the economy, Ben, how has 2024 been for ordinary Nigerians?
Well, you see, Eddie, 2024 has been, let me call it a kind of a hell for many Nigerians, especially the masses. Just recall how many days ago, in terms of rushing to get food to eat, this rice, in Ibadan, southwest of Nigeria, go to southeast of Nigeria, in Okija. Then you come to the center of where the seat of government is. There were also stampedes and in times trying to get rice to eat just for this Christmas. So that gives you the kind of picture Nigerians are faced with. And you see, Nigeria, in its own wisdom, decided to even have what they call agro ranchers. These are people who are supposed to kind of ensure that the farms, there is tranquility there between the farmers and herders. But we are not seeing anything. Nigerians are still grappling with these basics in terms of their needs. Where is electricity, for example, for the informal sector of the economy? If someone is running a restaurant, for example, some people would need some cold drinks. There is no electricity. And so you begin to depend on imported generators. And even when you have those generators, at what price are you therefore buying petrol or diesel to power your generator? So the higher you buy these things, of course, you have to transfer the costs to the consumer. That you look at the cost of transportation itself. People are no longer making profit in terms of transportation. So if you go spend some days or finally you have the petrol that is so costly, of course, in terms of commuters, you transfer that high cost to them. And in transferring the high cost, salaries are just very, very constant. Constant as per when you said it's 70,000 naira as minimum wage. Then how much is a bag of rice? A bag of rice, the least you can get now, even though this is time for harvesting, you get it for about 80,000 naira, just a single bag. And your salary is 70,000 naira. How do you handle that? Also, you have to pay school fees, you pay electricity bills, you pay all sorts of taxes that have been implemented in the country, so that in the end, you just see that the average Nigerian is just somebody that is not having the best of the best when it comes to what they say, delivering dividends of democracy.
Right. You earlier touched on the recent deadly stampedes across Nigeria, and as you say, it really highlights the country's economic crisis. For those that do not know about it, there's several incidents where food was being distributed in some communities where people are struggling, and because of the rush for these basic needs, there was a stampede that left dozens dead. That's what Ben was mentioning earlier. That just tells you the dire situation that people are in. And Ben, former Nigerian President Olusegun Obasanjo recently said Nigeria was failing its people basically due to widespread corruption, poor leadership, and immorality under Tinubu's leadership. What are your thoughts on this strong statement, Ben?
Let me say that is one of the, I could be wrong, but it's my opinion, one of the very loyalist Nigerians to Nigeria itself, compared with many other people. We are not saying that there was no corruption during his time, but he created also some agencies to ensure corruption is being fought. But talking about leadership, it is truly a thing of concern that it's like we are getting leaders who never got prepared to be leaders. And that is why we begin to have people who are so insensitive, as if there is no covenant between them and the electorate. They voted you in there to ensure that you provide them basic necessities. It's both ways. It's like the knife, both sides. Those who are against Obasanjo, who are spin doctors, let me call it that way, will always say the government of the day is doing the best. Obasanjo never did the best. But again, you look at, if Obasanjo at the time decided to pay the entire debt Nigeria ever owed, entire debt, to ensure that we start on a clean slate. But today you have the debt profile that is higher than how many governments put together that just one single regime of about 9 years has incurred for the country. And we are still with the level we are. Universities are not doing the best that they ought to be, and the airports operations are not the best they ought to be. Insecurity here and there. The roads are so full of potholes, no feeding. We don't have fertilizer blending companies anymore. Everything we want to import. Every time you see the president going abroad, he's trying to woo investors to come in. The more he leaves to go look for them, the more companies are falling up in Nigeria, throwing many people into the unemployment market.
Right. It's a well-known fact that if unemployment is high, obviously the youth that are out there that are not working will find something to do. And normally that something is not a good thing, which is what you're highlighting, Ben. Let me come to you, Mr. Adamu. You have been, throwing or putting the spotlight on the insecurity situation on the ground. The government seems like they want to do something about it. They said that in 2025, it would use artificial intelligence to track down bandits, kidnappers, and terrorists. What are your thoughts on that, and how could that help?
So technology can be a force multiplier if it's used appropriately. And of course, in modern day security and defense, as well as intelligence, AI and other forms of adaptive technology can definitely be a force multiplier. And considering the fact that the Nigerian security forces, especially the defense forces, have they are not adequate in terms of their resource disposition, including the number of boots on ground that they have. So any force multiplier would definitely be beneficial. But then there are some challenges that would really make the adoption of those force multipliers, including technology, effective. One of the challenges, as an example, is the inability to map Nigeria very well. At the moment, that is a huge challenge. Even military mapping technology or components are deficient in certain areas.
Can you break that down for those listeners? What do you mean mapping out Nigeria?
So I wouldn't want to go beyond that, because obviously it's a security issue.
No, but just to give an idea, when you say mapping out, just an idea, what do you mean?
So any technology that you adopt would need precision to work. And when your mapping is not completely effective or efficient, in other words, what you have as maps that you can use are defective, then the likelihood when you adopt that technology is that you have a defective output. That's kind of what I mean. And this can easily be resolved. You have a lot of young Nigerians who have graduated, who have skill sets in different fields, such as GIS, that not necessarily the military, but other departments within the Nigerian government can recruit and give them that responsibility to enhance the quality of the maps that we have, that the military can actually use. And of course, translate that into some technological devices that eventually would be useful. The second component is communications. The confidentiality of communications is absolutely important. And this is an area that I'm hoping that the Defense Headquarters and other security agencies would also look into, because that too can be a force multiplier. Not only that, it can help enhance the confidentiality of military and security operations generally. The third point is how the proper communication can be used using these force multipliers, the efficacy of communication in both social media and other spaces. So as an example, at the moment, you do have a situation where Nigeria is not adequately taking advantage of the platforms for communication to achieve the objective of getting the buy-in of different security operations. If you don't have the buy-in of the people, then it will become a little bit difficult. And then, of course, infrastructure challenges. Power is a huge challenge in Nigeria at the moment. The military establishment is struggling at the moment to pay for power. And so the more they adopt technology, the more their consumption or usage of power would likely be, except if they decide to go green, which I'm hoping would be the case. But even then, the capital cost for the initial investment of this green technology would also be huge.
Ben, let me come to you. We've said a lot of, things that have not gone right in Nigeria in 2024. What areas has President Tinubu performed well in? Is there anything to celebrate at all?
Well, I think it's like we are waiting to see which areas Tinubu is actually performing very well. However, maybe we just simply said that the rate of, attacks by terrorists appears to be reducing, even though the military will tell you that they are facing some daunting challenges. Because if we are talking of shortage of petrol, it affects the military. They don't have special refineries, So again, what used to be what you call armed robbers along major streets. You hardly hear of cases of armed robbery. Probably, do I say it goes to Tinubu, or there is a change, or maybe the armed robbers are receiving a great hit.
Are people hopeful that 2025 will be a better year?
Sure, people are hoping that 2025 will be a better year. Nigerians are always hopeful, very hopeful people.
No matter all the challenges, you still say people are hopeful and optimistic about 2025.
Absolutely, yes. Nigerians are a hopeful lot.
Okay. Then you would have the last words, Mr. Adamu. What can we expect from Nigeria in 2025?
The president held a media chat a few days ago, and in that media chat, he was very categorical that he does not regret his current reform policies, including the floating of the naira, his attempt at tax reform, and then, of course, the removal of subsidy. So that's very clear that we're probably going to see that in 2025, a continuation of that. He's also promised previously that there would be some softening, as it were, of the economic pressure that Nigerians are going through. If you look at the budget, there are some, what I would call ludicrous promises, actually, bringing down inflation to, I think, about 15%. The exchange rate that is currently at about 1,600, I think he's promising to bring it further down. And things like that. So we don't know if that will be achieved. So we're likely to see more political rhetoric around the reform and what the administration has been able to achieve in 2025.
Right. Whew. This has been quite loaded, but I have a feeling it's just scratching the surface of the challenges that many have gone through in Nigeria in the year 2024. But maybe I'll add my voice to the very optimistic Nigerians out there that, fingers crossed, hoping for a better new year, 2025. Thank you very much for your time, Kabiru Adamu, political and security analyst, also managing director, Beacon Security and Intelligence Limited. That's a private company that operates in Nigeria and the Sahel region. Also, many thanks to our very own Ben Shemang, DW correspondent in Nigeria.
Africa is changing. Don't get left behind. Tune in to Africa Link.
Nigeria is not alone. The situation in Ghana is not any different. The country is going through the worst economic crisis in decades, making the cost of living unbearable for many Ghanaians. But there is a saying that no situation is permanent. Some experts believe that both countries have the ability to unlock their vast potential and achieve sustainable economic growth. That will not come easy, of course. It requires a concerted effort from the government, private sector, and civil society to implement necessary reforms and create a conducive environment for economic development.
Get the stories that are shaping the continent here on Africa Link.
And that's how we end this edition of Africa Link. Join the conversation on our Facebook page, that's DW Africa. Listen to us on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts from. Click follow so you don't miss an episode. This show was co-produced and edited by Isaac Mugabi. And I am Eddie Micah Jr. Thanks for listening.
DW News.
I am Mimi Mefonel with the DW News.